What I try to do with my tour is to speak from the heart and be honest about what's happened in this neighborhood. And I feel like I'll be doing my neighborhood a disservice if I try to almost whitewash it. Brixton has so much culture, so much history. There's so much legacy in this neighborhood. I mean, the pub that we're sitting in, Paddy's Yard, was the first ever pub to be owned by a black person in this country. And for me, the only way to share these stories is to be honest and say, hey, this is what it is. And I think people that do the tour actually enjoy the honesty and the realness of it all. You know, Buckingham Palace is Buckingham Palace. Big Ben is Big Ben. You can see it all every day, any day. But seeing neighbours like this is how real Londoners live. London's a diversity. But when many tourists come and they stay in central London and they say, oh, well, where's the diversity? Not knowing that neighbourhoods like this is only 15 minutes away. That's why I'm here.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to a very unique episode of the Tourpreneur Tour Business Podcast. It is not usual that we are in an Irish pub. Well, that's actually quite usual, but it's not usual recording a Tourpreneur podcast episode there. Even more unusual is that we are here on a food tour, and even more unusual than that, the food tour is actually about Jamaican food. The only way this episode makes sense is if I hand the microphone over to my new friend, Obi, who is going to just take a minute and explain who you are and tell us a little bit about your company, just to get started, Obi.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Obi. I am the owner of a small boutique travel agency business called Gorgeous Tours UK. We specialise in doing African and Caribbean food tours in Brixton, which is considered the black neighbourhood of London.
So we were surprised by this tour and gifted this tour by our friends over at Get Your Guide. And they just said, just show up and trust us. You are going to be in for a treat. And boy, are we. We are full of, I don't know how many nationalities worth of food right now, but also full of stories of your culture, your family. This is one of the best tours that I've ever taken. It was just like such a special and touching experience. And that's why we said, listen, I know you have another tour, but can you just stick around for a minute and tell our audience about your business?
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Your tour ended where I'd like to begin, which is sort of the journey that you've been on developing this tour. It was a slow start, and then through some surprising turns of events, it kind of took off. Can you lead us through that journey?
Of course I can. So this business started 6 years ago. My wife and I, we love to travel around the world. And every time we travel around the world, we always like to try and see ourselves, no matter where in the world we are. Was in Thailand, was trying to find something black where we could see ourselves. We couldn't find anything, so we do this food tour in Bangkok market. Halfway through the tour, my wife turns around to me and she says, hey, Obi, you can do this. At the time, I was eating a dim sum, so I thought, well, of course I can eat a dim sum. But no, she was referring to the fact that I could be doing a food tour in Brixton market. And I said to her, look, that's crazy. Who comes down to Brixton to eat food? And she quite rightly pointed out that when my friends and family from Atlanta come to London, I end up doing the same thing that the tour guide was doing. So that kind of set the tone and set the wheels in motion. I came back to London. I started to operate these tours, but it was really slow going. It was not one of the things that, if you know anything about Brixton, Brixton is not a tourist destination. So when I first started out, it was really slow going, like 1 or 2 people a week. It was really not really making any financial sense. And then got my first booking after 3 months, which went really well. I was actually quite surprised because someone giving me money to do a tour in Brixton was like a foreign thing. And then the guy had a great time. He left an amazing review, and then another person booked the tour, and then another person. And all the whilst everyone was telling me, hey, Obi, this is absolutely amazing. There's nothing like this happening in London. To which I was like, nah, that's crazy. There's got to be somebody else doing an African and Caribbean food tour. And there was nobody. So I took the initiative. I started to spend money on advertising. But then COVID hit. I lost 3 years to COVID. In those 3 years, I did odd jobs around the world. I lived in New Zealand for 16 months. Came back from New Zealand. I started the tours back up again. Really slow going, like 1 or 2 people, not making any financial sense. And then May 2023, my whole life changes. Beyoncé comes to London. She doesn't do the tour, but thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans come over to London, and they found my tour and they booked the living daylights out of me. I went from 1 or 2 people a week to 10 people every afternoon and every evening. Off the back of Beyoncé coming to London in May 2023, my whole life has changed. I now do this full time. I do it 6 days a week, twice a day. I do corporate tours, group tours, rum tasting tours, shopping tours, anything culturally diverse you want to do in London, I'm your man.
Could you talk about, Obi, a bit about the region Brixton, as we were discussing earlier? I've not been here since the 1980s, and the place has completely changed. Could you speak a bit about how the place is changing and how tourism not just helped you, but is impacting the region and the shopkeepers and the stall owners and the people around Brixton?
Of course. Well, as you mentioned, Brixton has changed massively from the 80s. Brixton was always considered one of these neighborhoods that you didn't come down to because of how impoverished it was. Now, for many of you that don't know, many of the Caribbeans and Africans, when they came over to this country in 1948 to help rebuild the country, Brixton was one of the places that they settled. Brixton was one of the places that they settled in because it was affordable and cheap. That led to there being many issues and problems in this neighborhood with socioeconomic situations, financial issues. And by the 70s, when all the rebuilding work was done and completed, the British government didn't need us anymore. So they neglected neighborhoods like Brixton, Peckham, Notting Hill, believe it or not, because those were the concentrations where lots of black people were in. Brixton was such a rough neighborhood when I was a kid growing up that you did not come down here. If you were white and you walked around Brixton, people would ask you, what are you doing here? Are you lost? Please leave. Today is a very different place. Because of Brixton's location to downtown central London, Buckingham Palace, Big Ben, Trafalgar Square, all of those major landmarks are only 15, 20 minutes from Brixton. So investors and developers moved into the neighborhood and bought up pretty much a lot of these houses from us for next to nothing, from pennies on the dollars, basically, because we wanted to get out of here so badly. The impact of change in this neighborhood has led to me doing this tour. If Brixton doesn't change, I think I mentioned it during the tour, if Brixton doesn't change, if Brixton doesn't become gentrified, tours like this, other tours that happen in Brixton does not happen because of how bad the neighborhood used to be. So a lot of the small businesses, especially the black-owned businesses that which I try to go and support, they are absolutely over the moon with what I do because I'm bringing fresh sets of eyes, people that have been to Brixton back in the 80s like yourself, and you thought it, well, like, oh my gosh, no way. And you're coming back for the first time and realizing that, well, actually, it's a lot safer, it's a lot nicer. There's lots of things here to do. So a lot of the small businesses around here, the stall owners, the businesses are really grateful for the tourism that's happening in Brixton at the moment.
What's really interesting from a storytelling standpoint is the sense in which you're telling a complex and difficult story. It's the story that begins with your family in Nigeria, immigrating here for work, being mistreated in some ways. It's not a story of perfect redemption because it's also the story of the forces of gentrification changing and bearing down on a people, on a place. I'm wondering how you thought, and maybe it was just intuitive, how you thought about developing a storytelling that lives up to the reality of the place, but is still a tourism product, because what you share isn't a neat, positive story of tourism. I think sometimes people think that's what you have to do if you're going to be a tourism provider.
So you're right. What I try to do with my tour is to speak from the heart and be honest about what's happened in this neighborhood. And I feel like I'll be doing my neighborhood a disservice if I try to be, oh, well, this is Brixton, everybody, and almost whitewash it. Brixton has so much culture, so much history. There's so much legacy in this neighborhood. I mean, the pub that we're sitting in, Paddy's Yard, was the first ever pub to be owned by a black person in this country. And for me, the only way to share these stories is to be honest and say, hey, this is what it is. However, this is where we are going with it all and everything else. And I think people that do the tour actually enjoy the honesty and the realness of it all. You know, Buckingham Palace is Buckingham Palace. Big Ben is Big Ben. You can see it all every day, any day. Like there's lots of, but seeing neighbours like this is how real Londoners live. This is London's a multicultural city. London's a diverse city. But when many tourists come and they stay in central London and they say, oh, well, where's the diversity? Not knowing that neighbourhoods like this is only 15 minutes away. That's why I'm here.
You mentioned when we were walking around here in today's tourism world, which is booming, globally tourism is booming, and in a lot of destinations there is a problem with too much tourism, be it the gentrification and people buying a property and too many people in one district. There isn't a week goes by without that happening. You see it in the news somewhere. And when we were walking about today, you had people slapping you on the back, giving you hands, who've really supporting you doing what you're doing. But you also had some people being quite negative to you because of what you were doing. So how do you weigh that up what you're doing here. Some people view it very positively, but we also seen some people viewing tourism negatively.
Thank you very much. So I'm human, and, I'm a Cancerian, so I'm very emotional. And the positivity that I get from the neighborhood far outweighs the negativity. And for me, I always try to lean into the positivity because I know what I'm doing. I know if I'm not doing this food tour in Brixton, people are not coming here. I really want to go to Brixton, but you don't know what to do when you get here. For me, the positivity from those that like what I'm doing far outstrips them. I mean, there's always going to be, and I like to call them haters. There are always going to be haters out there that are going to like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I told you guys, someone came up to me and said, oh, you're the cause of gentrification in this neighborhood. I was just like, well, how do you work that out? I'm doing something positive to support the small black businesses that I left. But it's always the case. For every 10 people, you're going to have 9 people that love what you're doing, and you're always going to have one person, no matter what field of industry you're in, who's going to be like, oh, no, well, you shouldn't be doing this, and no, you shouldn't be doing that. And to be honest, I couldn't care less about them. I really couldn't care less about them. I love my neighborhood too much to care about one person who's not doing anything with their life coming to tell me about what I'm doing positive in my neighborhood.
So my sort of sphere of expertise is tour guiding, storytelling, and designing an experience. And for a living, I do a lot of taking tours and sitting down and giving notes, criticizing. I don't have a lot to say.
No way.
And it's because of a couple of things, right? Number one, the entire tour was your heart.
Thank you.
And I think this is a lesson for all of our tour operators out there. I don't know if you know this yet, but you're speaking to tens of thousands of people. But the heart overcomes nitpicking. If you're delivering a product and it's like, oh, there was too much quantity here, we didn't get enough of sweets, oh, there was too much rice, all of that kind of stuff. And I know a lot of our food tour operators deal with quantities and vendor issues and all of those things. You anchored it in connection. The first thing you did was memorize all 11 guests' names. The first thing you did. And that felt, as a guest, like you're seen. And it meant we could then address each other by names. I think I could actually remember now everybody's names from there. From that moment, you kept repeating them over and over again. And that drew us into becoming a little makeshift family. And you took the time for us to then go around the room and just very simply say why we're here, what brought us here, who we are, what we do, whatever it is. And then you took us on a very personal journey, a journey that weaved your family story, the evolution of the neighborhood with the evolution of you, your family, the place itself. But this is where I think the magic happened. It's a 3-hour tour, right? And
3 hours.
It's a 3-hour tour. In the first 90 minutes, I think we had 8 appetizers, 8 little tastings. And there's a certain moment where I was thinking, my God, this is going to be 25 appetizers, and I'm going to leave overwhelmed and inundated. And then we came into an Irish pub, and it was kind of like, what the hell are we doing here? Yeah. And that was such a special moment of disorientation for the guests, because it's a big question. Why are we in this historically black neighborhood? And then you drop the bomb, which is the first black-owned Irish pub in, I don't know, London or Brixton or
in all of Europe.
In all of Europe.
The first Jamaican Irish pub to ever be owned in Europe is this one here called Paddy's Yard. The bar is run by an Irish gentleman, and the kitchen is run by Joy and Gladness, who's a Jamaican chef. So it's Jamaican food, Jamaican soul, with the Irish vibes.
So Pete's got a Guinness, I've got a rum punch, and we're all eating an incredible feast here. But then the second half of a tour was just a conversation. Yeah. Was this all instinctive? Was this designed and developed over time? Talk to me about what that was like.
So, very good question. So, when I first started doing these tours, it was almost like a process of understanding what people want and looking at the guests, and if they say that it's too much or too, so like the quantities and everything else, I had issues with that problem as well. But it's through trial and error you work out what works best. One of the reasons I send out so many communications and emails to people like, hey, what can you eat? What can you do? Is to try and anticipate and work out how is each tour, how is each 8-course, 9-course menu going to be curated personally for that group so everybody enjoys themselves. So that's been intentional over the last 2 years. Since Beyoncé coming over and helping, like that's been very intentional. Like, right, okay, we are going to do this in two phases. We'll have our appetizers walking through the market, understanding the market, visiting stores, speaking to black business owners and supporting those guys. But then the second half of the tour is where we break bread. I always say it's our opportunity to network with each other. I've always believed in bringing people together. I've always liked sitting down, meeting people. I mean, God, if I didn't do the sit down and, hey guys, what do everybody do? We're not doing this now. Because I didn't know what you guys did for a living. But we sat down, we all broke bread, we all shared our own stories with each other, and now I'm doing this podcast speaking to thousands of you guys over on.
Have you ever considered creating a tribe of mini Obies? Maybe speaking to the other younger people about, because you were whinging about how old you were getting earlier, and I was laughing because I was going, you ain't got a problem with age, my man.
Son, Obi too.
So we like training some younger guys maybe to crack on and do.
That is the dream, that's the aim, to try and get some more people who are younger that come from the neighborhood, but also have the same passion for the neighborhood. This doesn't work. I mean, I have friends who are from this neighborhood, but don't have the same passion. I have friends that have the passion, but don't come from the neighborhood. And I always feel like, and I believe in that, if you're going to tell a story about a neighborhood, you've got to come from that neighborhood. There's no point coming from the outside in, okay, hi guys, so yes, this is Brixton, and that's David Bowie, and you're reading from a script. Like, that doesn't work. I've been on tours around the world, and you could tell when it's just someone's going through a script, and it's just like, okay, so yeah, that's David Bowie. He was born in Brixton. 1 second. 47. Whereas for me, if you come from the neighborhood, you would know a lot of these stories. If you don't know them personally, you would know them from your parents or your grandparents and people. So it's trying to find the right people. That is the dream. If I can find another OB1 or an OB2, I'll be over the moon, because I am literally, this summer has just been crazy. Beyoncé came back to London last month, 6 weeks ago, and I posted a story on my Instagram, and I don't know who got a hold of it, but it went viral, and so many people just started booking the tours again, and I'm grateful to God. I'm so grateful.
And by God, you mean Beyonce. I was actually interested. I was really interested to learn that the other guests who were on the tour with us were insurance agents who discovered you through somebody raving about you in their private Facebook group that the insurance agents share. I can't say this enough. The best marketing is the marketing you never really hear about unless you ask about it, because it's just the sharing of people who are passionately sharing their rave about you. Not leaving a polite 5-star review, which is great, but beyond a 6-star review, as I call it, the review that says, if you're going to London, this is the thing that you got to do. And some of the best feedback during the conversation was people saying, I'm so disappointed that I only took this tour on the final day, that this wasn't the way London started for me, and that it was so different than the London Eye and Harry Potter World and all the things that they were fed. But just to close this out, as a small business owner, I mean, we talked about the guide issue. What are some of the other struggles that you're having right now as a business owner? And I mean, I do want to ask, this was a lot of food.
Yes.
How are your margins?
Okay, so I'll answer the last question first. The margins are slim, but for me, I've always said, if you chase your dreams, money will, and the financial benefits will come later on. I know I'm not going to become a millionaire overnight doing it by myself like this. I've got to scale it up. But my intention right now is to try and support and highlight my neighborhood and support those that need the support. We might be the only guys that come in here today to actually eat food and everything else. So for me, the margins is not the issue. For me, what's the issue is trying to multiply myself. So the biggest issue that I have right at the moment right now is everything, as most tour operators that are running these things are solo business practitioners. I do all the admin, I do all the bookings, I do all the tours, I do all the correspondences. I get my phone ringing halfway through the tour. Hey, I'm lost. Can you come and find me? So all of those things are the good problems to have, but they're still problems. And it's just finding a way to maybe get a VA or an assistant to help me do some of the admin stuff. But then I have the issue of, I like to know what's going on. So even the fact that I know our good friends that get your guide booked you guys in, I still made it a point to say, right, who's coming? What's their names? I want to know who's coming. What food allergies do they have? Because for me, the more that I know about you guys, the more I could tailor this experience. If I have an assistant doing it and information doesn't get through to me and someone turns up and says, hey, I'm a vegan, I now have to think on the fly how to change an 8/9 course menu to suit that person. So answer the first question is just getting more assistance and more help. I need help with my marketing. It sounds crazy, but I do need help with my marketing. I had a social media person that was helping me with my social media, but they kind of disappeared. I need help with admin stuff and everything else. My wife helps me with my website, which is a WordPress website, and I'm having issues with it at the moment. So she's trying to figure it out. But there's just admin side. I think the tours are fine. I think I've structured them out to be a nice 3 hours, but it's more the things that people don't see. And I think I mentioned it during the tour. There's so much that people don't realize that happens in the background before the tour starts. You know, I get to Brixton an hour and a half, 2 hours before the tour starts, just so I could do my rounds and make sure everybody's around, because no one's guaranteed to be here tomorrow. Like, I could turn up and the business be closed because of changing times and everything else. So yeah.
This is something that actually is very common in the food tour industry. The balance between using incredibly authentic vendors who are maybe not as reliable as using a more commercialized vendor who you can count on, right? And in fact, we largely were out of the section of Brixton Village where it's brick and mortar shops where, you know, you could really count on eating there, going into the places. You were highlighting the people you knew, the people in the stalls, the people in the street, the Senegalese man, mango vendor. And you're right. You know, you said at one point, I'm so sorry, I'm just going to call to make sure the person over at their stall to make sure that when we come over, we're not surprising them.
It's there's so much that happens, and there's nothing worse than you've got a group of 10 people on a tour and you walk around the corner. Okay, guys, we're going to get some beautiful mangoes from and you get that up and opened. And that happens frequently in Brixton. You know, these small black businesses, the rents are so expensive for some of these stall owners that they might not be here next week. So I'm always constantly checking. I have another tour at 4 o'clock and I said, do you know what? I have to go. Even though I know they're there this afternoon at 12 o'clock, I still go around and make sure, hey guys, everything all good? You're expecting me? You know what? Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So yeah, I love what I do. It's real fun. But I want to learn, especially for people like yourself who are tour operators that have been on tours and everything else, are there ways for me to actually improve it? Is there ways that I can make things a little bit more manageable and so on and so forth? So
yes, I'm going to leave the tour alone because I thought it was, and I normally rip the tour operator a new backside, but it was good.
Thank you.
Great. But the business side, like a lot of tour operators aren't as passionate about the business side as they are about the experience. And I understand why, but that is a fundamental thing that has to be considered, because if you don't apply the business side the same passion as you do the operational side, things happen or don't happen. And you're in the classic position that many of your tourpreneur members are in, where you're basically a one-person band running it all. You went through all that admin and that. And I'm just trying to highlight, sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward. Every time you bring in help, be that other admin people or VAs or whatever it is, you've got to spend money on them. So sometimes you take a step back to go up again. But every time you take on guides, you're paying out for the guides, but you've been able to handle more people. Certainly in the community, we see people take years to do this. And sometimes you've just got to jump in with both feet and get on with it, because you've probably got a product here that could be blown up to a 10x what you're doing now. But you're not going to be able to deliver that without that. So my only thing would be to spend some time, when you get time, you're in the middle of season now, super busy, get some time, think about an action plan on how because you'll be able to get the traffic, it's how you're going to be able to manage that traffic.
I totally agree with you. My wife is a business analyst, so she does this stuff and she's like, okay, what's the next step? So my wife, she's like the visionary. She says, Obi, you can do this. I'm the doer. I'll go and do it. And she's like, what's the next step? How do you grow it? How do you expand it? How do you scale it up? Obi, when you're not well, I see you hobbling and going into Brixton still to do the tour because you don't want to let people down. Like, there's got to be a way around this. So yes, you're right. The ideal world is to take a step back and maybe get an admin person in to say, hey, just help me with the admin. That frees up at least 2-3 hours of my day because I'm not having to worry about bookings and messaging people and say, hey, looking forward to meeting you tomorrow and everything else. The long-term dream is to find 2 or 3 people like myself who can help me do these tours more regularly, because I am at the point, especially now of the peak season, I am getting a lot of bookings coming through and I'm having to turn things down because I just don't have the bandwidth.
So I'm going to be your admin today, and just to remind you, you have another tour starting.
Yeah, it's all. Is that wow? Time flies when you're having fun.
You know, some of the things I noticed, first of all, is like after the 8th appetizer, I just said, how is this a 99 quid tour, right? You could have removed one and nobody would have noticed. That then begins to carve out financial space for you to, and I don't know if you're doing this right now, pricing in your work as a guide into the tour price so that you have the financial freedom to begin to think about what it would look like for another guide to come in and do this. And I think there's also a universal story of Brixton that you're telling here that isn't the Obi story. The Obi story is amazing, right? And in fact, you end, I mean, I have to say, you began and you ended just beautifully. You memorized our names and we felt connected. And then you ended with a handwritten note thanking us. That's so beautiful. I mean, I talk about these wow moments all the time because like that just stands out as such a fantastic breath mint at the end of a really great tour, a really thoughtful tour. But you know, there's a level of storytelling here that is the universal story of the Black diaspora. And that universal story is a story that can be told by a non-OB, by a local Brixtonian, sure. But it's a story that belongs to Brixton, but also to the Black and brown folk that come from all around the world that are booking your tours, that are partaking in that universal story. And so there's a way in which partially the tour design can change so that it isn't only, these are the people I know that I grew up with or that I support, but a we, turning it from an I into a we story. And in some ways that can become just as powerful.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with that. There are a lot of the tour is my personal stories, my family's story. And as I said before, it doesn't make any sense if somebody else comes in and said, yeah, so Obi's dad bought his first house around the corner from here and everything else. And then you look at him and like, well, what's your personal relationship to Brixton? I think you are right. There is a universal story of Brixton that can be told by anybody. As long as they come from Brixton, they will have their own personal stories that they can input into that universal story. And I think that would work. So it's just finding the right person. And as you said, it's just taking a step backwards to take a giant leap forward. So yeah, that's the plan.
Why'd you name your company Gorgeous?
So, very, very good question. So a couple of people have asked me that question. So my son, who is 23 years old, when he was first born, he was the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen in my life. I was a young father. I was like 21, 22 years old. I was working in finance and I got made redundant when he was only 6 months old. And I promised myself at that point when I got made redundant that I'm never going to put myself in a position where I'm relying on someone for an income. So I started doing nightclub events and parties, which used to be called Gorgeous because of my son. And then I just kind of transitioned and decided to name my food tour business Gorgeous Tours after my son.
Well, Obi, thank you for a gorgeous afternoon. We really appreciate your hospitality, your thoughtfulness, and taking this time to talk to the tourpreneur community as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all for being on the tour. Like, literally, I did not know who you guys were. Like, you all rocked up. I was like, okay, hey, everybody. But this has been absolutely magical. And this is one of the reasons why I love these tours. Stations are the gateways to new possibilities. You never know who you're going to meet. And if you have a passion about something, that passion will shine through. And the people that are on your tour, on the tour, see that passion and they lean into it. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. And thank you for your advice and your advice as well. It means the world to me because, as I said earlier on, I don't know you guys from anywhere. And the fact that you're taking 25, 30 minutes to tell me how to improve or how to scale up my business means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, go to your tour.